Welcome to this episode on the Stronger Bones Lifestyle podcast. This will be a solo episode because I really want to discuss with you all why or how we have been misled about bone health and what you can do to take back control of your bone health. Let's start where it all began, really where the misleading component of bone health began. So the beginning of all of this is, let's go back to 1997, because what happened in 1997, this is a pivotal year. So the DEXA scan, which is the gold standard, which most of you have had, which gave you your diagnosis of osteoporosis or osteopenia, for those that have that diagnosis, most of us received that when we get a DEXA scan. Well, in 1997, the DEXA scan machine began to be covered by insurance. So all the physicians ran out and got a DEXA scan machine and started scanning women and were reimbursed. So there was a financial incentive, right? Because you could get reimbursed. And then for women, they could go in and get this test. Now, it traditionally or typically happens around age 65 is when the insurance will cover the DEXA scan. And then there was also at the same time the company Merck, which is a pharmaceutical company that had a pill called Fosamax, which is known as in the class of bisphosphonates. Merck partnered with the DEXA scan companies. The doctors now had the DEXA scan machines in their offices. And the results are that women were scanned. And the DEXA scan actually compares us to when we had the strongest bones, which is around age 30. So you're being compared to yourself at age 30. Now, of course, we lose things over the decades of living life, right? If you think about your eyesight, think about wrinkles, loss of elasticity in our skin. We see that, right, when we're in our 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. So, of course, we can't expect that our bones would be the same as they were when we were 30. Well, that will be an indicator of bone loss. Well, that's a scary thing because your bones are your foundation, right? More scary than losing your eyesight, or not losing your eyesight, but having your eyesight diminished so you can use glasses. And having the wrinkles, like, we don't like that. I don't like that I have all of those things. However, bone loss is a much scarier thing for us to hear. So when we are compared to ourselves at 30 and we get the DEXA scan, do you know that about 50% of the women scanned with a DEXA scan that are in menopause over age 50, about 50% of them will be put into the category of osteopenia or osteoporosis. So a lot. And what does that do? That pulls the rug out from under us. That makes us so worried. And that will lead to the aspect of medication. So the only tool in the toolbox for the doctors are medications. And so you get scanned, you get a diagnosis, and then you get offered the medication. There's no discussion in a doctor's office about the root causes of bone loss or trying to figure out, wait a minute, why is this happening in your body? Or what lifestyle do you have that may be contributing? Because we do not look for the why of bone loss in the Western model. We look for the what. Oh, wow, you have bone loss. The thing is that we all need to pay attention to or raise our awareness to, and this is what we haven't known or thought of, is that our bones are living tissue in a constant remodeling phase of building up and breaking down all day, every day. The pills that they offer, there's the class of pills called the bisphosphonates, which is the first class that was offered in the 1990s. They stop bone breakdown. And that sounds good, doesn't it? Yeah, of course I want to stop bone loss. But there then is no cleanup because the breaking down phase of bone loss is actually the cleaning up of old degenerative tissue so your body could lay down new, stronger bone. And if we stop the bone breakdown, the cleaning up, then we have that old bone still in our body. And then when your body builds new bones, it builds it on the old bones. And that's a shaky or a brittle foundation. It's like building a house on sand or with wood that's rotting. If your wood is rotting and you build a house, that's not going to be a very strong house. So think about that analogy. Well, that is what it's like when we take the bisphosphonates and stop that bone breakdown. So what are some of the things we've seen with these drugs over the years that they've done to women? These are some of the conversations I have when I work with women. So there's something called osteoporosis of the jaw, where your jawbone, which I've been told by one of the physicians I interviewed on my podcast, this is one of the closest ways for us to see our skeleton or look at our skeletons, our jawbone. And so these bone medications, the bisphosphonates, they actually break down the jawbone. And there are some dentists that won't even do dental work on women that are on bisphosphonates. One woman told me a story about her jawbone started breaking down from the medications, that she was actually pulling shards of broken down bone out of her gums. I mean, it's just such a visual. There's other drugs that they have now. So they have newer, they're called anabolics. And this is an important thing for me as well, because I think we just blindly go into our doctor, trusting our doctor. And unfortunately, the only tools they have are these medications. Many women aren't even educated on what are the medications that are being offered in the first place. So the one class is the bisphosphonates or the bone reabsorptive medications that stop bone breakdown. That would be what Fosamax, alendronate, I believe, is in that class. Reclast, I'm not sure if Reclast is in that class, but there's medications that are in that class. And then there's the bone building medications. Sounds great. Let's stimulate bone building. Those are called anabolic or bone builders. Here's the problem. They artificially stimulate bone growth. They are not part of the natural bone physiology in your body. So for a temporary time, you're falsely building bone tissue. The problem is that, sure, your DEXA scan might get better, or if you're doing a REMS, the ultrasound, you might get a better reading. But once you stop these medications, and you need to stop them because the studies show that over time, some of the things that are negative, that if you take these for too long, are you affect your liver and your kidneys, and we don't want to damage our liver or kidneys. So we need to take a drug holiday or then switch on to a new medication. Because if you stop this medication, if you stop it, you'll have a rapid decline in bone density, bone quality, really. And so this leads to this medication cycle, because once you stop the bone builders, you need to go on the bone medications that stop bone dissolving. So we go on this cycle here, and you're caught in this cycle. And I've worked with many women over the years that this is a cycle they don't want to be a part of anymore. Imagine starting this in your 50s and you're going to live to 100. That's 45 more years of figuring out what leapfrog jump you're going to be taking from one drug to the next. So this is what really we're understanding is medications do not lead to fracture prevention. I think that's a really important thing to note. One woman I talked to said that she was being offered a bone building drug injection that she was going to get. She went in to go get the injection, and she knew the woman that was there doing the injections, the nurse that was doing the injections. And she said, "Are you sure you want to go on this medication?" And that got her thinking, wait, what do you mean? Because this woman trusted whatever her doctor was telling her and hadn't done her own research to find out, what is this drug you're actually going to take? So she took it. Now she is in this phase for a few months where she can't just stop it. She can't just stop. She needs to figure out what's the next course of action. The thing is, women still fracture on bone medications, and that's important for us to know. This is not a safety net or a life raft or a life preserve when you take a pill. It's not, because you're still not addressing the why behind your bone loss. The same woman that the nurse said to her, "Are you sure you want to take that?" was talking to her neighbor who actually was on that medication that she's on. And her neighbor said, "Don't take it. I've been on it for 7 years and I've had a couple of fractures during that time." So let's raise our awareness to the fact that we don't actually prevent fractures when we're on medications. One of the pharmacists I interviewed on my podcast actually said they do not reach the intended goal, which is fracture prevention. So really important for us to just be educated, ladies. That's what I want. I want you to be educated. I want you to know what it is you're being prescribed, what it is you want to take or not want to take, and what are the alternatives to that. The other part of this is, so 1997, we had that partnership between the DEXA scan and the pharmaceutical company, and 50% of the population could be in a category to be recommended these medications. Actually, that pill became one of the first blockbuster drugs ever because there were so many women to market it to, which is what frustrates me, the disempowerment that began then. What happened next in the early 2000s was the Women's Health Initiative, where they studied hormone replacement. Now, the problem is the medications they were using, the hormones they were using were synthetic. They were not natural hormones. They also gave the estrogen orally, and that's not the way that estrogen is metabolized or utilized in our body through the gut. That's not the way to take it. We need it to go into the system either through, there's things you can put in your mouth, troches, I believe they're called, patches, creams, things like that. So what happens is that this study that was done with synthetic hormones and the wrong administration of medications actually showed a link when you use that, when you give it wrong and you give the wrong things, that you might increase your risk of stroke and cancer. So right away, all the doctors in the early 2000s took their patients off of hormones. One of the doctors on my podcast told me when we took the ladies off their pills right away, their hormone replacement, we started to notice an increase in fractures. So women started having fractures. Why? Because hormones are preventative. We need estrogen and testosterone in our system in order to protect our bones, our heart, and our brains. And so when they took the medications away, they started to see this increase in fractures. And I've had some women I've met with that told me their moms were part of that group where they were on HRT, went off of it, and had a fracture. So that in about 2023, that study was debunked. And now a lot of the functional medicine physicians are aware that that was wrong, that actually BHRT, bioidentical hormone replacement, is beneficial for bones, for brain, and for heart health, things that really matter to us women. The other thing, that Women's Health Initiative was not a peer-reviewed, and it was pushed through too quickly. So there was a lot of things. And another physician that I interviewed said, we let this happen. Like, we are the physicians, we're the doctors. How could we let this happen and let whoever was governing that do what they did? And estrogen is crucial for bone health, as is testosterone. So BHRT, bioidentical hormone replacement, ask your doctor if it's right for you, even if you're 10 years postmenopause, 15 years, 20 years. Research shows that even women 65 and above that have been out of menopause for 15 years can benefit from hormone replacement, bioidentical hormone replacement. So that's one of my recommendations. The thing that we have not understood up until now is that osteoporosis is a metabolic, lifestyle-based disease. It is inflammatory triggers. So inflammation is behind the why. So when you want to understand the why of bone loss, you have to look at the metabolic inflammatory aspects, because inflammation dissolves your bones. It dissolves bone tissue. There's over 100 factors that impact bone building and bone dissolving. When we realize that, ladies, we realize we are not powerless. This is not, here's your diagnosis, and here's the one thing I'm going to recommend, which is a pill. And, oh, you don't want to take this pill? Here's this pill. Here's this injection. Here's this. No, we are not powerless. And that is why I'm sharing this information. I want you to get this information, hear this information. There are lifestyle drivers that support stronger fracture-resistant bones. Sleep. You have to sleep. This is when your bones are remodeling. Nutrition, one of the biggest. You have to eat bone-building foods and stay away from bone-dissolving foods. What are bone-dissolving foods? Gluten, dairy, sugar, some of the top foods. Excessive alcohol or alcohol every day because your liver has to metabolize your hormones. Coffee, excessive coffee, or really caffeine because it's dehydrating and it's acidic. So we need to stay away from that. When it comes to nutrition for bone building, we need to eat foods that have protein. So we need protein as a building block. We need the vitamins and minerals, especially things that have calcium, magnesium, vitamin D, vitamin K, copper, manganese, boron, vitamin C, phosphorus. All of those are important nutrients that are the building blocks of bone tissue. So make sure you eat those in your food. Better to eat than to supplement, because then it has fiber and water and digestive enzymes with it as well. And then, of course, supplementation, smart supplementation. Calcium supplements, not smart supplementation. We really only need about 700 milligrams of calcium a day. 700 milligrams, not 1,200 if you're over 50. If you're trying to get 1,200, you're more than likely reaching for your yogurt on a daily basis, or your cheese or milk, in order to fill that need. In the UK, the recommendation is 700. In Europe, that's a recommendation. If you take too much calcium in supplementation, it contributes to heart attacks. That's what the studies show. So when you get closer to that 700, when you realize we only need 700 or 800 milligrams, then you realize you can get most of it from your food, if not all of it from your food. The next thing is movement. You have to move the right way. Let's talk about heavy weightlifting, because that's a big topic right now. So if you're going to lift heavy weights, you yourself need to know the proper function, or you need to be working with someone that can monitor you, make sure you're moving correctly when you're bringing in heavy weights, because if you don't, you could injure yourself. So let me tell you about a woman I met, reached out to me. She joined a study. It was a physical therapist watching a group of women doing heavy weights. They progressed pretty quickly. 3 months in, she hurt her back. She hurt her back so deeply that she actually can't even do anything right now. That means she cannot support bone building. So if you're going to lift heavy weights, make sure you do it with someone that is monitoring you, that you can be in proper form, and you yourself feel what's appropriate. How heavy are those weights you should be lifting? I personally don't lift heavy weights. I don't lift them. When I look at women who are lifting super, super heavy weights, it looks very unnatural to me. When I think about women in the past, we weren't lifting. Yeah, we were lifting bags of groceries or rocks, or we were lifting laundry or things like that. So there's a lot of things we can do on a daily basis where we're lifting things heavy. I lift bags all the time. I lift heavy things. I consider that my weightlifting. And if you are going to do heavy weightlifting, please make sure you're working with someone that can monitor you. For those that aren't a part of a gym or don't have the financing for a personal trainer, there are other ways to build stronger bones, to build stronger muscles. We need to build stronger muscles. That's the most important thing. So heavy weightlifting can help, but only if it's done safely, and that needs to be something we pay attention to. One of the women in my yoga class that came into my yoga class told me, I've hurt my back. She goes, I did it in the gym yesterday. And she believes she knows what she's doing correctly, but enough that she actually has to take herself out of any exercise for the next few months. Hopefully it's just a few months. So many women injure themselves. And of course, there are those that don't. And definitely if you work with a personal trainer or somebody that's functional and can help you, I would say yes, do that. My favorite is yoga, because yoga does all of the things. It's going to make stronger muscles. The longer you stay in postures, the deeper you bend in postures, the farther away from your body you put your limbs and then bend into them, like the standing postures, warrior two, side angle, triangle, goddess, twisted triangle, dancer, tree, all of those, chair pose. Those are all fantastic postures to build stronger muscles. Here's the things that yoga does that weightlifting and the other things don't. It increases flexibility. The longer your muscles are, the more they stretch. That helps with fall and fracture prevention. Maybe when you're falling, you will elongate that process so you fall better. If you're listening to this and not watching, I have air quotes, fall better. You become bendable and not breakable. And I've heard this hundreds of times over the years. I've worked with thousands of people teaching them yoga, and they tell me their stories of falls where they should have fractured. They feel like they should have fractured, or they had a hard fall and they say, guess what? I didn't break. I've honestly heard this hundreds of times, men, women, and I believe it. I've had it happen to me. One time I was walking and I tripped, and in the tripping, I was so present moment. I tried to lengthen my leg out longer so I wouldn't actually fall. Like I was in the moment so intensely. Well, I did fall and I didn't fracture. Joint mobility. The more flexible your joints are, the less likely you are to pull on your bones and fracture them. We need dancing ankles, dancing hips. So joint mobility, when we're doing the balance postures, really important. Posture. critical for fracture prevention in your spine. Half of all the fractures are in the spine. So postural and postural awareness, working on strengthening the muscles that need to be strengthened to support posture and lengthening the muscles that need to be lengthened to support posture. Balance, because we need to prevent falls, because bones don't break because they're fragile, they break because we fall. So balance becomes critical, and that you learn in almost every single yoga class that you're going to take. That's a really important thing. Strength, building strength in your body with yoga. And the other benefits of yoga, stress is one of the biggest contributors to all diseases. So stress management becomes critical. Yoga is not just a physical practice, it's a mind-body practice. The actual goal of yoga is freedom from suffering and to manage mental energy, is to control your mind. That's what yoga is. So when you're in those strong hold postures, when you're holding those strong postures for a long time, you're actually having to stay super present moment with your breath, because you're like, whoa, how much longer am I going to be here? And is she going to stop now, or whatever it is? But you're super present moment in that moment. Yoga contains breath work. You're learning all the breath work techniques that are important for managing internal biochemical balance, self-regulation, supporting your nervous system, your cardiovascular system, all the body systems for that internal balance to focus bone building and not bone breakdown. So yoga has so many aspects. And then you have the meditation aspect, right? Which is going to be the mind management piece and keeping yourself in a calm state. And that is what we all need for health, no matter what facet of health. So this is about taking back control. Sharing this information with you is because I want you to realize that you are in control, and I want you to take control. The current medical model is outdated. Scan, diagnose, prescribe meds. That's the old approach. The truth is that 80 to 90% of the women probably don't really need bone meds. Not Debbie Robinson, functional health coach, yoga therapist, functional bone health expert. Not my words, the words of the orthopedic surgeons that I work with that have bone clinics that do not prescribe very many medications because they say most of the women don't need them. So this is the new approach, the future of bone health. So what is the future? Is that we address bone loss or osteoporosis as a metabolic inflammatory condition, that we focus on lowering inflammation with the way that we move, the thoughts that we have, and the foods that we eat, that we realize that we need to focus on the lifestyle approach. So lifestyle as medicine. Our goal is to become fracture resistant, fracture proof, to become strong, to become resilient. This is why I started this podcast, and this is why I do this, because I want to give you the knowledge. I meet women all the time. They don't even know what their DEXA scan is. They say, oh, I probably should have had it ready for our discussion. They don't know what the numbers mean. They don't know what the medications are that the doctors are prescribing. They don't know what foods to eat or what foods they shouldn't be eating. They don't know what the right movements are. They don't know that stress is dissolving bones. They don't know that sleep is related to bone health. They don't know the right movement. So I created this podcast to give you that knowledge and to give you the tools for you to be in control and in charge of your own bone health, because I know that it's possible. If you want more of this, join my community, Stronger Bones Lifestyle Community. Stronger Bones Lifestyle, because it is a lifestyle. Very low cost monthly. I teach a live cooking class every single month. Hormone support, gut support, anti-inflammatory foods. I went to professional cooking school in the early 2000s. I really know my stuff when it comes to food. And as a functional health coach, I run functional labs. I run urine and stool. I look at gut health and neurotransmitters and oxalates and mold and yeast and all of these markers that become contributing factors to bone loss in the ladies I work with. And I take that knowledge and I put it into my cooking. I teach you how to cook foods that support health, support bones, build fracture-resistant bones, and stop bone dissolving. So Stronger Bones Lifestyle Community, I'd love to have you join that if you want more of this. I also have 2 live sessions in there where I share something valuable, whether it's the top 10 bone health supportive habits we need every day, or protein. How do you find enough protein in your food? And I give recommendations during those Ask Me Anything sessions. I also bring an expert in every single month. Last month, we had a functional medicine internal physician. The month before, I had functional coach, health coach, or functional movement coach teaching us how to squat properly and effectively. I've had orthopedic surgeons in there. And so I am creating an environment where we can become more relevant, more current, more educated, more knowledgeable. Because when you do this, that is when you're in charge of your own bone health. So if this resonates with you, I'd love to have you join. If you have friends that need to hear this information, please share this. When I work with women, they say, in my group of friends, they're taking the bone meds. They tell me, just take the medication. Or when they go to parties, they say, all they have is pizza and pasta and crackers and bread and gluten, gluten, gluten. And so I say, okay, well, you bring some yummy dish that's not gluten. And I share lots of yummy dishes that aren't gluten because not only did I go to professional cooking school, I was already a pretty skilled cook. And I have lots of delicious, yummy recipes that I've been sharing for years in my community. I'm actually known where I live as being a really gourmet cook. So it's something that I'm never going to live down. I don't want to live it down. So share this episode with your friends that need to hear this. Ask questions when you go to your doctor. Challenge them. If you do come into my Stronger Bones Lifestyle community, I bring in physicians that are training women on how to speak to your doctor. What are the studies you can share with your doctor when you're asking them for alternatives to medication or whatever it is your discussion you want to have. So I teach you how to ask questions because I give you the information, and then suggest topics. For those of you that want to hear more, want me to interview more physicians or more people, please reach out to me. Tell me, hey, can you give me more information about this? So here are my parting words for you ladies. We are not fragile. We are in control, and we are strong. That's my message for you. Take control of your bone health. Don't give that power away to a pill, to your doctor, or to anyone else. They are your bones. This is your life. Thank you for listening. Thanks for joining me on Stronger Bones Lifestyle. Are you ready to take charge of your future? For show notes, resources, and information on my programs, please visit DebbieRobinson.com. If today's episode empowered you, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs it. Together, we're building stronger bones and stronger lives. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.